Spine-chilling encounter, 17 soldiers exposed to sinister paranormal forces in haunted Ukraine. Jake Thompson, a former soldier, was haunted long before he returned to Pennsylvania. The whispers began during the days spent in Ukraine. Nightmares were one thing, but on the battlefield, he couldn't shake the feeling that something was watching him, waiting. Now, sitting in his suburban home, the memory of that shadowy mansion he had stumbled upon gnawed at the edges of his mind, like a dog with a bone. The reports from the front had been breathtaking: 17 soldiers driven mad by darkness while trapped inside those walls. It can't be real, he thought. Yet, as the moon cast long shadows across his living room, Jake felt that same tension building within him, looming like thunder on the horizon. It wasn't just the memories that crippled him now. Anxiety coiled around his gut as he watched his daughter, Lily, twirl in her innocence. Each giggle echoed louder, louder, until the sound twisted in his chest, reminding him of the quiet aftermath of death. He blinked hard, subduing those flashbacks, and focused instead on her bright, shimmering eyes. But the relief was brief. As he pushed through the trivial grind of daily life, strange incidents darkened the mood in their cozy home. Objects shifted without reason: a mug out of place, a remote found in odd corners. Each night turned the walls of familiarity into cooling bones of dread. Jake could no longer deny it, something sinister lurked in the shadows. One evening, while drowning in paperwork at the local community center, fatigue wrapped around him like fog. He glanced out a back window to find the colors of the fading sky stifled by graffiti. Grotesque figures and ancient symbols marked the alley, angering and enticing his memories from that cursed place in Ukraine. A warning pulsed in him, but he couldn't grasp it fully. Images of his platoon confronting apparitions flitted through his mind, nightmares made flesh that momentarily turned his blood to ice. With a shudder, he turned back to his work. Before we continue, I need to tell you something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to their system and many people are missing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and select all notifications so you don't miss future videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. The night stretched longer, burdened with an unsettling presence that slithered through his home like smoke. Whispers caressed the air, shifting in and out of understanding, dark threats curling around every corner. A dozen times, Jake caught himself glancing over his shoulder, especially at the cheerful family next door. Their perfectly manicured lawn and peachy smiles felt like a facade over a grisly truth. Desperation clawed up his spine, igniting an irrational suspicion that could not be silenced. What dark secrets might happen behind their idyllic lives? Then dread sharpened into something real. At the community carnival, a supposed joyous haven, Lily vanished amidst the thrill and laughter. Panic gripped him as he shouted her name, his heart thundering in his chest like distant artillery fire. Desperation clawed at his insides, and he dove into the crowd, his senses heightened. The lights that once twinkled with possibility now glared down, throwing shadows that writhed as if alive. As memories of war swirled in his thoughts, the comforting noise of the carnival turned sharp and dissonant. He was racing against time, convinced that darkness enveloped his little girl. In an abrupt flash, the same eyes he feared were watching him in the shadows hinted at a more profound truth. Was it evil he defaced in the war, or should he fear the smiles next door? As he plunged deeper into chaos, one thing became frighteningly clear: the nightmare was just beginning. Jake's heart raced as he pushed through the throngs of people at the carnival. The joyful cacophony pierced his ears, but all he could hear was Lily's name spilling from his lips, a desperate chant against the thrumming chaos around him. Each second stretched like a rubber band, pulling his sanity taut. Strangers looked at him, their faces twisted with confusion, pity, or annoyance. Their staring eyes felt like a spotlight, narrowing the focus on Jake, amplifying his terror. The carnival lights flickered, momentarily plunging him into darkness. In that breathless second, a memory seized him. He had been in that mansion, playing the same game, looking for someone lost among the malevolent shadows. And now, standing here, his mind screamed that history was repeating itself. A chill crept up his spine, as if ghostly fingers were tracing his fear. He turned, scanning every face, every silhouette that slipped into the haze of the festivity. Then he spotted a flash of pink, a little dress swaying at the edge of the Ferris wheel's glow. His breath caught as a wave of relief washed over him. "Lily!" he shouted, shoving past a group of teenagers. As he drew closer, something felt wrong. The little girl he saw was not Lily. It was another child, laughing too hard, too wildly, as if caught in a trance. The laugh faded into a whisper, chilling him to the bone. "Help me," it seemed to say, and suddenly, the air thickened with an unspeakable dread. In every corner, shadows moved with a life of their own. Fingers tightened around his throat as if the very presence of the carnival was coiling in on him, drawing him deeper into the pit of despair. Frantic, he turned, only to stumble upon the neighbor's family, the ones he had eyed with suspicion. They were standing together at the edge of the vibrant chaos, their expressions eerily vacant, almost frozen in a ghastly tableau. Their smiles were gone, what replaced them were hollow eyes stitched with an unsettling light. Jake stepped back, heart hammering. Then, through them, he saw a figure at the back of the crowd, a silhouette draped in shadows, drenched in the dim flicker of the carnival lights. It was tall, unnaturally so, with limbs that didn't seem to bend like a human. The air around it turned frigid, the screams of children drowned in an avalanche of silence. His instincts kicked in. He turned his back on the neighbors, adrenaline pumping through his veins, pushing through the crowd again until he saw it, the entrance to the old funhouse, with its warped reflections and crumbling facade. It stood like an ominous gate, taunting him with memories he wished to forget. It was in there, he felt it deep in the marrow of his bones. Whatever had taken root in Ukraine had followed him back. With no other choice, he charged toward the funhouse, the shadows whispering along with him, an unearthly chorus urging him to step closer to the edge of madness. What lay beneath the warped mirrors and darkened corners? What unspeakable horrors awaited him inside that tattered entrance? As he took his first step into the darkness, dread knotted in his gut. There was no going back now. And in that moment, an echo of laughter, twisted and faint, fluttered behind him like a ghostly breath. It wasn't just Lily he needed to save, it was a battle for his very soul. What if the darkness that had haunted him in Ukraine was the key to everything? He had to know. The nightmare was far from over, and something waited within those walls that could change everything. The moment Jake stepped inside the funhouse, the air thickened. The stench of mold and stale popcorn hit him like a punch. Mirrors lined the walls, each one contorting his reflection into grotesque figures that danced on the edges of his vision, mocking him. He took a shaky breath, but it felt like the very air was alive, squeezing the warmth from his lungs, leaving him gasping. That he moved deeper, the recurring echo of laughter following him, slithering around the corners and teasing him from behind reflective surfaces. It was disorienting. The dim light flickered, creating dizzying distortions, blurring reality. In that moment, he felt as if he were inside a living nightmare, one that had pressed its clammy hands against his heart and squeezed. "Lily!" he yelled, hoping his voice could pierce through the layers of darkness. The sound swallowed itself, dissipating into thin air. No welcoming scream came back, no answer at all. Jake clenched his fists and pressed on, battling against the overwhelming weight of shadows that seeped from the corners. Suddenly, a figure materialized in one of the funhouse mirrors, translucent and twisted. A pale face peered at him, features blending into a mask of horror. It was the little girl from the carnival. Her eyes, wide with terror but devoid of life, called to him from behind the glass. Jake's heart dropped. He stumbled back, nearly losing his footing. The mirror wobbled as he moved, the girl's image rippling like water disturbed by a stone. "Help me," her voice came forth, chilling him to the core. Was it a plea or a command? "Stay away," he shouted, his voice becoming raw, but the girl vanished, and the mirror returned to silence, reflecting only Jake, sweat glistening on his brow. The laughter returned, closer now, almost vibrating through the funhouse walls. It echoed not only in his ears but deep in his skull. He pressed his palms against them, attempting to block it out, but it was no use. The sound was relentless, invading every breath. Jake stumbled further inside. A maze of twisted passageways awaited him. Shadows slithered and swirled, taunting his every move. Each step seemed to elongate in time, dragging him deeper into an endless loop of dread. He wanted to call out for Lily again, but his throat felt raw, suffocated by something unseen, something he could almost feel breathing on the nape of his neck. Then he saw it, a figure in the distance. Tall and ancient-looking, its silhouette carved against the faint light coming from nowhere and everywhere, as though the darkness itself had a voice. Those limbs stretched farther than what was natural, and each of its movements seemed choreographed in anguish. Jake froze, paralyzed by an urgency he couldn't comprehend. It was drawing closer, casting an ethereal glow that illuminated the warped mirrors surrounding him. Each reflection morphed, displaying distorted realities, children lost in a labyrinth, their tiny hands reaching out from the shadows, faces twisted in pain. Jake, the voice of his own name, laced with despair, crawled through the air, captivating him. It was not a plea but a sentence, condemning him to this purgatory. His heart thundered. He wanted to run, but the very essence of the funhouse gripped him, pulling him back toward whatever waited at its center. He could feel the pulse of something sinister throbbing through the air, an invitation wrapped in malice. Deeper still, the laughter echoed, now mingled with whispers, demanding him to move forward, not knowing what horrors lay in wait. With one final surge of will, he turned on his heel, breathing heavy as he sprinted toward the entrance, a primal instinct battling the allure of the darkness behind him. As he raced, a mirror caught his eye, a familiar silhouette behind the girl's form. Was it Lily? The funhouse shook, and for a fleeting moment, Jake swore he saw Lily's face mirrored at him, terror reflecting back. He faltered. Was it her, or yet another trick? Bracing for impact, he hurtled himself toward the exit. But with a bone-chilling crack, the world around him began to collapse. In the chaos, as the laughter crescendoed, he felt fingers latching onto his arm, cold and relentless. Don't leave. Jake's heart raced. What had he unleashed? Who could he trust now? As the shadows closed in, he realized the worst was yet to come. He wasn't alone, and those he loved might be lost forever. Storming towards the exit, he grasped the edge of reality, struggling to break through, because this twisted game was far from over. What had followed him into the dark? More importantly, who or what awaited him at the end? Jake's world spun as laughter followed him, its sinister melody echoing through the corridors of the funhouse. The cold fingers around his arm squeezed tighter as his body rebounded off a wall, pain shooting through him. He gasped, fighting to free himself, scrambling against the tilt of warped mirrors that seemed to taunt his every move. Get away from me. His voice cracked, lost against the cacophony of frenzied giggles and whispers. He twisted, ready to face whatever haunted him, but found only the empty glass, reflecting his fear back in a dozen fractured pieces. Then, a shadow shifted. With narrowed eyes, he caught movement in the corner of his vision, a flicker behind a mirror, distant yet so close. His heart raced. Was it another child like Lily? Or something worse? He couldn't risk the chance of leaving anyone behind. Pressing his palms against the cool glass, Jake leaned forward. Lily! He shouted again, desperation oozing with every syllable. The darkness clung to him like fog, a suffocating weight as he waited for a response. Then, a faint echo of her laughter tickled his ears, mingled with chilling howls that spiraled up from the depths of the funhouse. The sound danced and twisted, each note morphing into cries of anguish. Jake shivered as the echoes crept into his mind. Jake, there it was again. The voice, soft yet piercing. Could it be his own name mocking him? I'm coming, Lily. He took a step back from the mirror, contemplating the path forward. The air shimmered, as if anticipating his choice, and he felt the ground beneath him shift, a slow, ominous pulsing that resonated within the walls. Despair clawed at his insides as darkness swirled around him like a predator. The laughter shifted, morphing into something sharper. He clenched his teeth, adrenaline fueling every step as he charged deeper into the maze. Shadows glided along the floor, whispering promises of nightmares he couldn't bear to entertain. Had he mistaken every innocent face? Were they all trapped in these cursed reflections? Lily. He didn't know whether he yelled for her or himself anymore. Suddenly, his feet slipped on something wet, and he lost his balance, crashing onto the floor. He glanced at his hands, slick with a dark, viscous substance. It glimmered ominously in the dull light, an early indication of whatever had swallowed this place in despair. The laughter crescendoed, dangerously close, and Jake shot back to his feet. He pressed on, heart pounding like a war drum. Each step pulled him into deeper confusion, the mirrors twisting, each holding grotesque versions of reality. In the distance, a heartbeat echoed steady and strong. It pulled him forward, but he no longer trusted his senses. Teetering on the edge, he made his way to the sound, only to find yet another warped reflection of himself, but this time there was someone else standing beside him in the mirror. Not just a reflection, was the girl Lily. Her face twisted in fear, mouth forming silent words. "Help me." An icy panic surged through him. Had she been calling him this whole time? Jake pounded a fist on the glass, desperation clawing at his insides. "I'm here. I'm trying." But the mirror splintered, and the image dissolved, leaving him staring at a fragmented nightmare. Jake turned on his heel. The laughter took a different turn, a mocking chuckle that echoed endlessly. He couldn't give in to the shadows. He had to find her. He pushed onward, every instinct screaming for him to escape, to get back to the entrance. Yet again, he felt those fingers wrap around his wrist. This time, they were burning cold. Panic turned his blood to ice. He whirled around, but only darkness awaited him. "Don't leave." It was a chorus now, whispers, voices too many to count. Each syllable crackled with malice, reverberating through the air as if all the lost children were reaching out from the void. Breathing heavy, haunted by the weight of unseen eyes, Jake turned once more, racing through the mirrored maze. But would he ever escape? The laughter grew louder, an uproar that blended with a sudden, far-off cry. Was it Lily? Panic spiked as he pressed on, feeling the edges of his sanity fraying with every step. What horrors lay at the heart of this dark funhouse? The walls seemed to pulse, anticipating his next move, whispering secrets of despair. Each mirror he passed was a reminder of his failure, a reminder of the girl trapped beyond. Would he find Lily before it was too late? In the oppressive darkness, a new question lingered: what if no one was getting out? Jake stumbled deeper into the maze, the muffled sounds of laughter closing in around him like a suffocating fog. Each twist and turn felt like treachery, as if the very walls conspired against him. Sweat dripped down his brow, and his breath came in ragged gasps. The familiar voice calling for him echoed louder, merging with the laughter, becoming a cacophony of torment. "Lily!" he shouted, voice strained, desperate. But the funhouse twisted the sound, warping it into something malicious. The heartbeats pulsed louder now, thumping in rhythm with his pulse, a heartbeat that felt both familiar and foreign, both inviting and forbidding. As he dashed past more mirrors, he caught glimpses of himself, a hollow-eyed figure, lost and pleading. A fleeting shadow flickered behind him, but when he turned, there was nothing. The laughter suddenly ceased, plunging him into oppressive silence. It left a void in his ears, a sickening pressure that made him feel like he was going deaf. In that silence, Jake's heart pounded harder, the beat thundering in his chest like a warning bell. "Help me!" the voice smothered him, so close yet just out of reach. It resonated not from a distance but invaded his very mind, wrapping around his thoughts and squeezing tight. Jake's stomach twisted, nausea creeping in as he pressed forward, trying to follow that voice. The voice he feared belonged to Lily. He pushed through a narrow passage, the walls almost closing in as they seemed to breathe alive and aware. A cold breeze swept through, carrying the scent of decay, the stench of forgotten dreams and lost souls. The darkness thickened around him, wrapping around his limbs, and he strained against the weight, fighting to keep his head above the rising tide of panic. Suddenly, something moved in the corner of his eye. He turned, and there it was, a figure standing at the end of the corridor, partially obscured by shadow. It felt almost familiar yet grotesquely wrong. The edges of its form flickered like a failing light bulb, leaving him unsure if it was a figment of his imagination or some twisted reality in this hellish funhouse. "Lily?" He breathed, but the figure remained silent, slowly extending an arm. Jake took a step back, dread pooling in his stomach. "Come closer," it whispered softly, yet the tone dripped with something sinister, something that made his skin crawl. "No!" he shouted, heart racing. "Leave me alone." He turned to flee, but the laughter erupted once more, this time more frantic, filled with a twisted joy that chilled his bones. As he ran, the floor shifted beneath him, throwing him off balance again until he slammed against a wall. Pain coursed through him, but he didn't dare stop. He had to find the exit, had to find Lily, another pulse, a distant memory of joy he clung to fiercely. Jake pushed off the wall, sprinting through the winding corridors, each turn pulling him further into the depths of despair. He could almost hear her voice, a gentle echo urging him forward. But the reflections distorted now, showing faces twisted in agony, their mouths opened in silent screams. Each glance intensified his fear, the mirrors mocking his every effort. "Lily!" he yelled in desperation. Was she trapped behind one of these reflections? The thought twisted his heart, then he halted, breath caught in his throat. Ahead, a massive mirror loomed, its surface rippling like oil. The heartbeat radiated from within it, a sinister hum that felt alive. He stepped closer, entranced by the unsettling beauty of the glass. Jake helped the voice, stronger this time, seemed to vibrate through his very bones. In its depths, through the reflections, he saw her face, wide eyes, lips trembling. "Please." But as he reached out, the mirror cracked, splintering into millions of shards that reflected endless horrors. Jake fell back, heart racing, mind spinning out of control. "No, not again." The laughter resumed louder than ever, now a hysterical shriek. The funhouse was alive, feeding off his fear. What awaited him in the next room? Was Lily lost forever in this hell? The questions lingered, stabbing through the air like shards of glass, that he had to find her before it was too late. But what would he sacrifice to face the source of the laughter? Jake recoiled from the shards of glass, fear pulsing through him like a tidal wave. The laughter echoed, sharp and relentless, biting into his thoughts as if trying to tear him apart from the inside. He stumbled backward, frantically searching for another way out. The corridor twisted, mocking him, the shifting walls closing in like jaws ready to consume him whole. "Lily!" His voice felt feeble, a whisper swallowed by the chaos around him. He needed to move, needed to find her before the funhouse squeezed the last shred of hope from his heart. Jake darted down the next passage, each step heavier than the last, the laughter now morphed into distorted cries that sliced through the air. In the shadows, he saw more figures, all flickering like dying flames. They were trapped, just like him, faces twisted in terror that reflected his own anguish. Breath quickening, Jake pressed on, but the very ground beneath him seemed to shift, mocking his determination. The walls wrinkled and groaned, the paint peeling off to reveal skeletal structures hidden within. Flickering lights overhead buzzed angrily, casting deep shadows that seemed to claw at his legs, trying to pull him down into dark oblivion. Suddenly, directly in his path, a heavy door appeared, old and warped. It looked out of place, an ominous anomaly amidst the madness. Heart pounding, he grasped the cold handle and yanked it open. The creaking sound echoed like a solemn tolling bell, and Jake hesitated at the threshold. The room beyond was dimly lit, illuminated only by a weak flicker of a single bulb hanging from the ceiling like a noose. As he stepped inside, the heavy door slammed shut behind him, leaving him in an oppressive silence. This new space smelled stale, like neglected memories, and there was an overwhelming heaviness that pressed down on him. In front of him, scattered about the floor, were remnants of broken toys and tattered clothes, remnants of children who once played there but had long since been forgotten. Each piece sent a shudder through him, a reminder of lost innocence twisted into sorrow. "Jake!" the soft voice echoed in the room, a caress and a command, urging him to listen. It was so close he could feel her presence, yet something was wrong. The air grew colder, and his breath clouded in front of him. "Where are you, Lily?" Panic crept back into his voice, a wild edge that rang hollow in the abandoned space. "Help me." The sadness laced in her tone sent a chill racing down his spine. It felt like she was above him, trapped in the ceiling, or worse, beneath his feet, lost in some dark grave created by the funhouse that he sank to his knees, the ground cold and unforgiving against his skin. "I'm here. I will find you." Desperation sharpened his words, but a creeping feeling of dread clawed at his gut. A sudden rustling sound caught his attention. Jake whipped around, eyes wide, searching the dark corners of the room. Shadows shifted unnaturally, and a wave of movement crashed from the walls. Then he saw them, faces emerging one by one, children with hollow eyes, their mouths stretching into ghastly grins. They stared at him, lost and pleading, but that pleading morphed into something else, a wild and terrible hunger. "Come play with us," they chimed in unison, a sinister melody that echoed around the room, rising and falling with unnerving cheer. His heart raced. "No. I want to play." He stood, retreating until he smashed against the door, desperation flooding his veins, but the room shifted and morphed. Where there had been a door, now there were only walls closing in tight. Laughter erupted around him again, louder, frantic, blending into a symphony of madness. Jake felt the air thin, and the voices began to blend into one unbearable scream, punctuated by their relentless laughter. His gaze shot up to the ceiling, intuition screaming at him. Suddenly, he felt the weight of something cold and heavy begin to drop, a twisting shadow that loomed above him. He had to escape. He had to find Lily before this wretched thing consumed him, but would he be strong enough to face the horrors that lay ahead? A loud crash broke the laughter, and the shadows lunged toward him. He had no choice. He had to charge back into the terror outside, a place he feared more than the darkness behind him. What twisted fate awaited him? Would he find Lily? Or would the haunted echoes claim yet another restless soul? Jake slammed against one of the shifting walls, the children's echoing laughter fading into the chaos that pulsed in his ears. With the shadows closing in, his heart pounded like a war drum, each beat reminding him that time was his enemy. He had to find Lily. The realization struck him, she was part of them now, lost in a darkness he couldn't comprehend. "No!" he shouted, voice jagged with desperation, and he began to run blindly into the twisted hallways. He felt the walls pulse and twitch, as if they had a life of their own, and every step he took felt hollow, swallowed by the very ground he stood on. He rounded a corner, and the laughter erupted again, sharp and torn. Each sound twisted through the air like a knife. Shadows lurked behind him, teasing him, taunting him. Jake spun around, forcing himself to look, but when he did, all he saw was darkness. "Lily!" He dared to cry out again, heart racing with fear that coursed through his veins. The weight of the atmosphere pressed down on him, clamping around his chest. The memories of them playing together, of her carefree laughter, both comforted and haunted him. "I'm coming, I swear." Suddenly, he noticed something in the distance, a flicker of movement. He focused, straining his eyes against the dim light. There. At the end of the hallway, a glimpse of a familiar figure. Lily. He sprinted toward her, hope igniting a desperate fire within him. "Wait for me." But as he drew closer, she began to fade. The walls rippled, distorting her, eyes wide, mouth moving in silent agony. No. It couldn't be. Cold horror gripped his heart. The laughter escalated, morphed into yells and screams, morphing back, an endless loop of terror. Then, just as he reached the end of the corridor, a doorway materialized in front of him, a door like the one he had originally found. He hesitated before pushing it open, the creaking sounding like a warning. Stepping inside, he saw a room bathed in eerie light. At the center stood a mirror, tall and ominous, reflecting his wide-eyed despair. But something was twisted, his reflection was not his own. It grinned back at him, a sickly smile that stretched too wide, eyes gleaming with malice, eyes that were not his. Come play with us, Jake the reflection whispered, voice oily and slithering, echoing the children's taunts around him. He felt his skin prickle, as if it were trying to crawl away from that unspeakable grin that he staggered back, but the sensation of another presence gripped him, a cold breath against his ear. Can you see me now, brother? Jake froze, the voice familiar yet distorted, too familiar. It was his long-lost twin, a shadow lost long ago. You shouldn't have come here. It shrieked, jagged edges cutting through the silence. You'll join us. The laughter swelled, rising to a maddening crescendo. With the mirror now pulsating with a life of its own, Jake faced the ghastly vision, the children rioting around him, their bodies twitching, melding into grotesque caricatures of joy and pain that he spun, and the room warped again, blurring, edges melding, his surroundings ebbing into a vortex of despair. He could barely breathe, terror threatening to engulf him in the ever-tightening grip of the nightmare surrounding him. Then he found it in himself a spark of defiance. No. I want to play your game. He turned and launched himself at the mirror, fists raised, determined to shatter the bloody reflection imprisoning his spirit. The instant he struck, chaos erupted. The room shook as if the very fabric of the funhouse screamed in protest. Dark energy surged around him, puppet strings that had held him prisoner began to snap, but just as suddenly, he felt a pull. The floor ripped beneath him, dragging him toward the yawning abyss. As he wrestled against the icy grasp of the void, Jake's last thought as he was sucked into darkness was, where's Lily? A world of shadows awaited him, but would he find her? Or was it already too late? The sinister laughing echoed down the hallways, ushering him toward whatever lay ahead. The abyss clawed at Jake, dragging him further into an endless dark. He kicked and flailed, but it was like fighting against a raging river. Just when he thought he would be swallowed whole, a blinding light burst forth. It consumed him, and he was flung out, landing on a cold, hard surface. He gasped, pulling air into his lungs as he scrambled to his feet. The world around him was now unrecognizable. He had emerged into a vast, dingy room filled with the remnants of forgotten toys. Dolls with cracked porcelain faces stared blankly at him, their eyes betraying a twisted sadness. The walls were painted in faded pastels, but the colors were muted, drained of life, much like everything else in this place. Lily? His voice echoed, the sound ricocheting off the walls and back to him, making him feel ever more alone. He scanned the room, desperate for any sign of her. The laughter returned, softer this time, yet somehow more sinister. It slithered around him, wrapping around his spine like an icy serpent. He turned, knowing he had to confront the source, whatever it might be. A door creaked open at the far side of the room, its hinges groaning in protest. He crept toward it, heart hammering in his chest. On the other side, he heard whispers soft and menacing. The very air thickened with dread. As he pushed the door wide, the laughter transformed into high-pitched giggles. A group of shadowy figures stood huddled together, their backs turned to him. Each child wore tattered clothing, their hair wild and unkempt. Jake's stomach twisted. Were they like Lily? Were they lost too? Come play with us. They cried in unison, turning to face him. Their faces, once innocent, twisted into grotesque masks of delight and malice. Jake staggered back, throat dry, panic flooding his senses. Where's Lily? He gasped, realization settling in the pit of his stomach like a stone. What did you do to her? The children's laughter rang out again, echoing harshly against the walls. She's one of us now. They chimed, spinning in circles as if caught in a macabre dance. Join us, Jake. He felt the pull of their voices wrap around him, sweet promises mixed with dark undertones. Memories of all the times they played together flooded his mind. The warmth of her smile, the sunlight playing through the trees on lazy afternoons. But this was twisted. No. He shouted, breaking free from their grip. I want to become one of you. The ground shook, and the toys around him began to vibrate, rattling dangerously. The children's faces contorted with fury, transforming back into the shadows that Jake had seen before. You think you can resist? They growled, reaching out with cold fingers that seemed to stretch into tendrils of dark mist. The room flickered, lights flickering wildly as the atmosphere thickened around him. He had to move. Jake turned and sprinted back, the oppressive darkness chasing him, clawing at his heels. The laughter morphed into screams, distorting into howls of rage. He burst through the door, slamming it shut behind him, your pulse racing as the darkness thumped against the wood relentlessly. In this moment of false security, he clung to hope, but even that began to dim. Jake. A voice pierced through the air, a whisper so familiar yet so fragile. It echoed in the distance, pulling him into its grasp. Lily. His voice broke, desperation surging through him as he ran toward her. But as he rounded the corner, the hallway twisted again, the walls closing in around him like a tightening noose. What awaited him ahead? Could it really be her, or was it just another trick of the darkness? With trembling hands, he pushed forward, caught between hope and terror, a choice inching closer. Would he risk everything for a glimpse of his sister, or would the shadows take him too? In a world spiraling deeper into madness, Jake thought he heard a soft giggle follow him, chilling him to the bone. What if it was the last sound he ever heard? Jake's heart raced as he stumbled down the hallway, the walls warping and shifting like a living thing, closing in on him with an oppressive weight. The laughter echoed again, a chilling reminder of the children he had just encountered. He pressed on, clenching his hands into fists, fighting against the creeping panic twisting in his gut. Lily. He shouted again, desperation clawing at his throat. Where are you? Please, answer me. The darkness pulsed around him, alive with shadows that seemed to listen, to watch. As he ran, the whispers morphed into mocking taunts, echoing from every corner. Why do you search for her? She is ours now. He stumbled into another room, this one filled with stacks of old toys, some broken and others covered in a thick layer of dust. A plush bear, its fur matted and eyes glazed over, lay discarded among the wreckage. Strange, he thought, why was there no dust on the dolls he had seen earlier? This place felt like a graveyard, but of laughter and innocence lost. Suddenly, a small, echoed giggle danced around him again. It was high-pitched, innocent, but laced with something darker. This time, the sound sent a shiver down his spine. He turned sharply, scanning the room, searching for the source. Lily. If you're here, make a noise. He pleaded. But the only response was the faint rustle of fabric, like a whispering breeze, stirring the stale air. Then, he spotted a flicker of movement in the corner of his eye. A shadow darted between the toys. Heart pounding, he followed it, feeling drawn toward whatever wretched thing lurked in the shadows. As he approached, he noticed a small door slightly ajar, hidden beneath a pile of torn teddy bears. This must be it. He crouched and pushed it open, revealing a narrow staircase winding downward into darkness, the smell of decay wafting up to meet him. Lily. He called, louder this time, but only a grotesque echo bounced back. The silence that followed throbbed in his ears. Against his better judgment, Jake gripped the banister and descended the stairs. Each step creaked suspiciously under his weight, a sound that reverberated ominously in the stillness. The air thickened as he went deeper, trapped between anticipation and dread. What if it was a trap? What if the darkness engulfed him forever? At the foot of the staircase, he found himself in a cavernous space, illuminated by flickering lights that swayed like will-o'-the-wisps. The room was lined with grimy mirrors that reflected his pale face back at him from every angle. A grotesque funhouse unfolding, mind games twisting what little reality remained. Then he heard it, a soft voice that sent a wave of sorrow crashing over him. Jake, I'm here. His heart leaped. Lily. He shouted, rushing toward the source. But shadows erupted from the mirrors, projecting malevolent specters that reached for him with slender fingers. Their faces were contorted, mirroring his own panic at that moment. Join us. They cried in unison, their voices blending into a chaotic cacophony. With adrenaline surging through him, Jake hesitated only a heartbeat. He had to reach Lily. He had to break through. He lunged forward, but the shadows closed in from all sides, swirling around him, pulling him back into their grasp. "No!" he yelled, fighting against the darkness. "I won't give in." But with each struggle, more shadows emerged. They grinned with sinister delight, closing their ranks in a macabre dance, trapping him closer to the mirrors that rippled with his reflection. Then, as Jake felt their cold breath on his neck, he heard Lily's voice again, this time stronger, more urgent. "Jake, look!" He turned, breath catching in his throat, and saw her framed in a mirror, a faint glow surrounding her. "Help me!" The world around him swirled, and he grasped at the glass, driven by instinct and desperation. But the shadows laughed, and the mirror began to darken, the light flickering as if it might go out forever. With every ounce of strength he had left, Jake reached out for his sister. Would he pull her back into the light? Or would the darkness swallow them? Both? What was the price of escape? Would he have the courage to pay it? Jake's heart raced as he plunged forward, hands latching onto the glass surface of the mirror, summoning every ounce of strength to break the boundaries that separated them. "Lily!" he cried, his voice cracking under the weight of despair. Outside, shadows writhed and surged like they were alive, their mocking laughter stinging his ears. He felt their cold fingers weaving through the air, pulling at him, desperate to reclaim this fleeting hope. But he couldn't lose her again. Not like this. Not after everything they had endured. "Jake, don't let go." Lily's voice was filled with determination, cutting through the chaos surrounding them. The glowing light around her pulsed, mingled with shadows that tried to snatch her away. His chest tightened as the mirage flickered, almost extinguishing like a candle in a storm. "Hold on, I'm coming." With renewed resolve, Jake pushed harder against the mirror as if he could force reality to bend to his will. He concentrated on the warmth of their memories playing outside beneath the sun, laughing and chasing fireflies in the warm twilight. It was a flame deep inside him, igniting his will to fight against the sinister grip of the funhouse. Suddenly, the world around him exploded in color as he felt a connection surge between them. The glass began to ripple, echoing with a melodic tone that resonated through his soul. In that moment, figure and reflection blurred, intertwining in a dance of light and shadow. Before he could second-guess himself, he shouted, "Together!" And with one powerful thrust, he pushed with all his might. The mirror shattered, cascading in brilliant shards across the space, each fragment pulling him deeper into the magical light that enveloped Lily. Jake felt a rush of warmth wash over him, banishing the darkness that had been tightening its grip. He was pulled through the remnants of the mirror and, in that instant, everything around him shifted. The laughter morphed into terrified gasps, fading into silence. As reality realigned itself, he tumbled into a new world. The oppressive shadows melted away, replaced by the bright, sunlit space of the carnival, filled with fluttering flags overhead and warm laughter cascading from joyous families. Jake blinked rapidly, the sunlight harsh against his eyes. He looked around, heart pounding, and there she was, Lily, standing beside him, wide-eyed and unscathed. Relief washed over him like a tidal wave, choking him with emotion. He rushed to embrace her, the weight of monsters, mirrors, and madness drifted away as he felt her small body pressed against his. "Jake!" she exclaimed, brightness radiating from her innocent smile, unaware of the nightmare they had narrowly escaped. That he knelt, holding her close, feeling the warmth of life override the cold tendrils that had sought to consume them. "I thought I lost you," he breathed. Lily beamed, pulling back to look him in the eye. "You came for me." Her voice was sweet, as if the darkness they had just faced was an unfathomable dream. Then he glanced around, searching for remnants of the horror they had just fled. But instead of shadows lurking in every corner, he saw familiar faces, carnival goers laughing, children playing. The funhouse stood there too, but it felt muted, dull like a forgotten storybook. Shells of ghostly laughter whispered in the breeze. Whatever had haunted them there seemed to retreat, never again to snare them within its grasp. "Let us go home," he whispered, taking Lily by the hand, gripping it gently but fiercely. Behind them, he felt the ghosts of the past slip away, forever trapped within their mirror, a testament to darkness thwarted by love. As they walked away from the carnival, with the sun dipping low on the horizon, Jake felt lighter. Each step forward brought hope, each breath filled his chest with vibrant life. In the distance, the shadows lost their hold, clinging angrily to that cursed place they had left behind. They returned home, the key to victory resting in unity, laughter, and the fierce bond of brother and sister, unbreakable in the face of darkness. That night, as they nestled into their cozy, familiar home, Jake felt a peaceful serenity wash over him. He closed his eyes, exhaustion settling in, but his heart was unburdened. This was the moment of new beginnings. But deep in the shadows of that funhouse, the chilling laughter lingered, waiting for the next souls to wander through, and as the screen faded to black, a final chilling whisper echoed in the void. Don't forget to subscribe now. This is the moment to show your support. Smash that like button now to feed the algorithm. Flood the comments section with your theories about the eerie ending, and for goodness sake, share this video immediately with at least 5 friends who need to see this gripping conclusion. Don't wait even one more second. Only true fans understand the importance of keeping this story alive.